It is Wednesday, August 21st. We're at Hauser Junior High. This is the regular business meeting of District 96. Margie, can you call the roll?
Mr. Barsati?
Present.
Mr. Hunt?
Here.
Ms. Kleiber?
Here.
Mr. Marhol?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Muirhead?
Here.
Ms. Murphy?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, is there any public comment?
I guess I'll start off.
Okay.
My name's Glenn Kaka.
I'm sorry, could you come?
Avenue.
I'm sorry, could you come over to the microphone? Thanks. That way people at home can hear you.
Glenn Kleka, 3640 McCormick, Hollywood, Illinois, 605-13-1616. Phone number is 708-485-1213. I think you have my Gmail from last month. I was at last month's meeting. I've obtained most of my information through the Landmark and Bob Uphughes. He's the one that seems to be most informed as far as what's going on with the purchase of the Hollywood Community House. And also by reading the Landmark to see what's going on. I did not learn much by coming to your meeting last time, but I hope it is still being planned to have a forum so that the public can speak and that you can get all the parties involved. It seems like Bob Uphughes has gotten together with the spokesperson for the zoo. Her comments were that access road is their service road. I went there today to check it out, to take pictures to see what it was, because once I had gone by it, it had 3-foot-high grass growing by the gate, and the chain was all rusted, and the padlock was all rusted. Well, they have put weed killer on all the weeds, so the weeds are down. There was a man there that said he works for the zoo, because he asked me if he could help me. I says, yeah. I says, how often does this gate get open? He goes, well, I've worked here 20 years. I've never seen it open in my entire life. He comes out there to smoke all the time. That's his smoking spot. So I don't think it's too much in use. The signs that are labeled is the entrance to it says for authorized personnel only, and on both sides it says no parking fire lane. So if that's the purpose of it as an emergency access for fire lane, it's certainly underused, and it could be moved to McCormick Avenue rather than using Hollywood Avenue. McCormick Avenue has the same roadway going up to the same double gates, same entranceway, but it's never been opened. It's overgrown with weeds. There's actually a portable basketball hoop in front of it. I have pictures if you need to see it, or you can go by there and look at it. He contacted the Village of Brookfield, and their comments were they don't want to get involved. It'd be opening a hornet's nest, quote unquote. But I think you need to get the high school involved, you need to get the zoo involved, the Village of Brookfield involved, District 96 involved, and the community. Okay, the zoo did own the 3 houses adjacent to Hollywood Avenue right there. 8600 Rockefeller, 8506, 8500, and 8510. The zoo did own all 3 of those houses 20 years ago. They sold off the 2 lots 10 years ago. Bob Uphughes was able to go right on his computer, tell me when they were bought, when they were sold, how much they were sold for, and everything like that. The one that is on the corner where Dr. Rab used to live in from the zoo, it's totally vacant. Windows are boarded up on it. All the windows have black plastic on it so you can't see in. One of them has fallen down. I was able to take one picture looking in through there. The ceilings are all paint peeling off. Curtain brackets are empty. There's nothing in there. But I guess the zoo does maintain the outside of the grass and everything like that. But it certainly hasn't been used in at least 10 to 20 years. There is a permit in the window from Brookfield issued for a building permit to re-roof the building, new gutters, soffit, and tuck point the chimney. That was issued back in, September 20th of 2010, and expired on 3/20 of 2011. Still in the window. So I would say that building's not being used. The house right next door to it is 8506, currently has a for sale sign for it. It was originally listed as $429,000. It is now listed today, when I looked at it, it says $410,000. So that family wants to get out of there real quick, I guess. They're lowering the price. They bought it 10 years ago for $266,000 from the zoo. That's 3.32 acres is the size of the lot. Also, the lot next to it on both sides are the same equivalent. So if you bought 3 lots, you'd have an entire acre of property. Let's see, what else? Oh, if they want a fire lane into the zoo, instead of using Gulf Avenue, they could use McCormick. The street is paved all the way to their gates. It's just overgrown. It's 1 block over, and it'd be a straight access. If that's where they want a fire lane, it'd certainly be easier for a fire truck to go straight into the zoo than the way it is set up now. The cul-de-sac there off of Rockefeller, where the parking lot is for RB, they would have to go through Gulf Road, through the parking lot, through that curved cul-de-sac, and then into the zoo. McCormick Avenue could be a straight shot in, if that's what the purpose of it is. I don't see how it's being used as a service entrance. Since I did go by to take pictures today, if anybody wants to see them, I have them to show all the signs that are posted. It is all residential parking with an H on it, which means that you have to be a resident and have an H in your window through the hours of 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., Monday through Sunday, it says. Hollywood Avenue in front of the school, Hollywood School, says 2-hour parking. I think it'd be a good idea if you could get the first 3 spots labeled handicap. That would be your closest entrance to the front door of the school. So instead of just 2 hours, why don't you make those first 3 spots handicap? Just a suggestion. I would like to see a date set for this forum so that the public could attend and we could learn more about it. We had a block party. I spoke to many of the residents. None of them wanted to sell the Hollywood Community House. I did speak to the superintendent before the meeting started, asked if this new multi-purpose room was going to include an elevator. She says no, because the second floor is not ADA accessible. It's only stairs going up there. One of the parties at our block party says their child, when they went to Hollywood School, fell on those stairs because they had the lunchroom on the second floor. She has told me now that the lunchroom is no longer on the second floor. It's only used for 5th grade, for arts room, I believe she said. It was just by chance. It was the first day of kindergarten, and they were all outside on Hollywood Community House property, tables set up for lemonade, teachers reading them stories, parents with them, a lovely, beautiful day. They were in the shade of the tree, the Hollywood Community House. I donated a tree there when one tree died, so for the future generations. Did that back in 2017 before any of this came up. Mike Kays, that was here, his parents donated the butterfly garden that was right outside where the kids were sitting and having the story read to them. Please consider having the forum. Consider other options. You don't have to tear down the Hollywood Community House. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Is there any additional public comment? All right. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? All right. If not, then that brings us to the superintendent's report.
Yes, thanks. So, as everybody here knows, today was the first day of school in Riverside District 96. Actually, our staff members came back on Monday. So I have just a few items related to the beginning of the school year. It was a great day. I was able to get to all 5 of our schools and just great energy. It was the perfect weather day for first day of school too. So always love the first day, and teachers and parents and children, everybody seemed really happy. I did just publish our school calendar here for everybody's information, also providing information about our Institute Day or Institute Days. So we had staff members back on Monday and Tuesday of this week, and We actually met at North Riverside Village Commons for the first time because we wanted to be able to have our entire staff together in one space and to be seated at tables rather than auditorium seating, just to have some more interactive learning opportunities for everybody. And it was, North Riverside was really gracious about it. It worked out to be a great site for us, and it worked out really well, and the content was really wonderful around reaching every learner and learner variability and important instructional strategies for that. So that was a great day, and then the second day is spent, staff members are at their individual buildings and focus on building level goals and opportunities to collaborate and connect with each other in terms of student planning. So that was also a well-received day. I put the schedule there for our new teacher and mentoring and induction. We have 11 new teachers that have joined us. Really happy. We're excited to be able to bring in high quality staff. I really feel like every year we have that opportunity, but there's just so much conversation about the Illinois teacher shortage that I think in particular felt really pleased that we were able to bring in such a wonderful group. And we look forward to possibly bringing them maybe to the September COW just to make an introduction, and that's something we've talked about, finding a way to make that connection between the board and our new teachers. But the schedule's there. Teachers went through a 3-day mentoring and induction last week, the week before school started. The other thing that's been very significant, as you all know, is the district office officially made our relocation in August to the 3340 South Harlem address, and I think things are going really well. We have cleared the lower level under Central for Central students. It is actually, we had to do some minor renovation, and there will be an inspection yet this week, and we will have students down there for some of the small group learning, social work, psychology. A conference room will be located down there, our innovative learning specialist. So it looks funny to see it empty right now, but we'll fill it up in a different way with students. And so again, that's gone really well. Families seem to find their way to the new office for registration. It just seems to have gone really fairly seamlessly. So thanks to everyone who's involved in that. There were a lot of people in this room that were very involved in that. And then the other thing I just wanted to make mention of, obviously we have a lot more facilities work that'll be a major focus of the school year, but in particular one of the new plans and programs was to open up a visioning process for looking at the Central Hauser campus, looking at parking and play. So that proposal was approved by the board a while back, and we're getting ready to kind of launch that process. So those are just some key items I wanted to make sure that the board was all well aware of, but also the public. So looking forward to a great school year. And that's my superintendent's report.
All right. Thank you for that. Okay, next up is the consent agenda. Could the secretary read the consent agenda?
Yep. So the consent agenda for tonight's meeting involves the meetings, minutes of the previous meeting, which was the closed session, July 17th, 2019, and the regular business meeting minutes from July 17, 2019, the personnel report as presented, payables pre-list as of July 31st, 2019, and payables pre-list as of August 21st, 2019.
Does any board member wish to have an item removed from the consent agenda? All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Marcy's like, I don't know what that was.
Margie, please call the roll.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Miller? Mr. Muirhead?
Aye.
Mr. Marhol?
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber?
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay. Next is the Riverside Education Council. No, nothing? Okay. Next then, we have our board member comments.
I'll just make a quick comment. I know Sherry and Dan and I were at the first day at North Riverside. Comments, and the energy in the room was just, it was great. It was a really, it was a good feeling to the start of the school year, and I was glad to be able to witness it. So,
Thank you for coming.
The view from the back of the bleachers really was good. Good as well. It was a full house, packed, yes, as was mentioned, a lot of energy, a lot of, you could feel the enthusiasm, people ready for the year to start. It was great to be a part of it.
I ran into one of our teachers today, and she also noted that how exciting it is to start the year and how excited the kids are, and this is why we're all here. I think the excitement it's there. We know why we're here.
My 8th grader wasn't excited.
Even the 8th graders look a little excited walking in there.
If he was excited, he didn't let on. Just kidding. I'm sure he's very excited.
For what it's worth, my 4-year-old was very disappointed that Tuesday was not the first day of school. He had to wait till Wednesday, and it wasn't even a school day today. It was just the introduction to the classroom.
That's cute.
Tomorrow, that'll be a big day. All right, are there any other board member comments? All right, let's see, next we are moving to committee reports, and this is, we are changing the formatting a little bit. I think we've had committee reports directly underneath board member comments in the past, but I think the thought is that perhaps that might have been a formatting error that is carried over into the present day. So we are separating it, which I think makes a little bit more sense.
No. Sounds good.
Okay. So with that, from the committee reports, the first one listed is the Personnel Committee.
So Joel and I met with Martha and Jim on, what was that, August 6th, I think it was, 2 weeks ago, just to kind of, that was the first meeting, just kind of formulate thoughts on what the purpose would be, what type of topics we would discuss, and I think all of us kind of came to the conclusion. We also discussed some of the changes with with Jim's team and some of the structure behind it, with other things that were going on there with some of the recent changes that have happened. And I think generally speaking, the consensus between us was, as far as the staff goes, the day-to-day operations, they needs to be handled the way that they feel they need to handle it. But anytime something arises, either Martha or Jim want to use, or anybody else for that matter want to use, just us as a sounding board, or just get like a general feel for what the board might think about a particular topic or something like that, we'll be there for it. But really outside any major issues or something like that are really popping up, we're probably not going to be super involved with a lot of the day-to-day actions that are going on. Just kind of let them run the show the way that they feel is fit, but here for any suggestions or clarification or guidance or anything like that for any particular issues that are there. So I don't know that we'll have, I guess maybe I'll say, I hope we don't have regular commentary at these board meetings, because there's probably some other issue going on here, but it'll probably be hopefully few and far between of any major things that pop up. So that's pretty much what we have for now.
Thanks, Wes. And Joel. Next is the Finance Committee.
I met last week with Mr. Fitton and with Martha, and basically looked at the budget, which Mr. Fitton has more or less, I think, finished, and he's going to talk about tonight. And I think that was basically the gist of the whole meeting. So I don't think there's really anything else of note.
All right. Next then is my old domain of the Policy Committee.
We have a special section.
I remember those fondly.
Yes.
Can't wait.
So we'll be discussing that, but just sort of a heads up though for, what I understand is this is going to, you'll see some of the policies in here that are 5-year review that aren't necessarily 5 years. The reason being is, from what we've been told, and you're very lucky, Dan, that you're out of this now, is that the next group of policies that are going to be coming out later this year apparently is going to be the largest one ever.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Ever.
Yes.
I saw the handwriting on the wall.
Yeah.
Okay. We look forward to.
Yes. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. We will wait.
We might have
with,
our own special meeting just
right.
for policy.
Wait with
Oh,
anticipation for later in the agenda. All right. Next is the Education Committee.
Okay, we'll be meeting with Martha and Angela really soon. Sorry, I've been ill, so I had to postpone. But we have been writing about what Martha talked about with the mentoring and new teachers. And having been both a mentee and a mentor myself, it's one of the most important things that we can do for those teachers. It's extremely tied to growth of our students and making everyone in their team feel productive and valuable, and so I'm really excited to hear from Angela and the team about what they're doing for the new teachers. And I was actually surprised at the Institute Day, you're waiting for, oh, every building is going to have this new teacher and that new teacher. There's surprisingly few new teachers per building, and shows to our longevity and to the quality of the administration and the staff, so that was really nice. We're also going to be talking about just what happened at summer school. I think there are over 400-something students that participated. I don't have the exact number on my brain, but it was very successful, so we're going to hear more about that and some other things. And also, if there's anything that you wish you wanted to hear, please let us know, because I'm not always talking to every one of you every week, so let us know.
All right. Thanks, Sherry. And last one listed is the Facilities Committee.
We have not met since the last board meeting, but there is a meeting scheduled for September 12th, I believe, in the morning. Keep you updated.
Yeah, we haven't met as a committee, although I know there's been a lot of smaller work being done. So stay tuned for some exciting.
Well, and I should say and I could combine this with Jeff. Jeff and I spoke with Ramesh last week, and that is where the CM contract comes out of. So we'll discuss other facilities elements later in the meeting.
Okay. Thanks, Joel and Linda. Okay, next up is old business. The first item is the class size waivers. Is there a motion to approve the class size waiver as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion over the class size waiver?
I have a question about the Blythe Park numbers for kindergarten. It seems that we have looks like we have a very high kindergarten enrollment this year, unusually high. So it would seem that the average if you look at Ames and Central and Blythe together with their 8 sections and sort of leave Hollywood off to the side, it would be about 18 students per section per school. But I'm seeing that we only have, it looks like 28 for Blythe? So I'm wondering about that. How do we get that?
Yeah, so it's
there?
a unique combination of factors. We've had a couple kids move out who were anticipated in the enrollment after we made the assignment. We had a couple transfer requests, some which were honored, some which were not. And really, I would say that would account for it. And then we've had more move-ins that have kind of pushed up some of the other enrollments in locations that it would have been hard to relocate them to Blythe. So I think it's clear to the board, and I think it's becoming clearer to the community that we really have established this goal, really this plan to sort of we've always had a flexible boundary policy, or for many, many years, District 96 has had a flexible boundary policy. But I think in terms of how much that was exercised with some effort to really kind of reposition where children are being enrolled, perhaps hadn't been a significant issue. And as we've studied our facilities plan, I know, again, the board is well aware, and as I said, the community is becoming more aware that we absolutely would like to get 2 full sections at Blythe. So we have 2 first grade sections at Blythe. We have 2 kindergarten sections. They are lower than the other sections, and so that has been a challenge. There's been a challenge in families understanding that Blythe is a wonderful, wonderful school, that's where they would want to have their children. I think there's just some great information about Blythe that will continue to emerge even over the course of the year around student success stories and how well children are doing on state testing, and it's a lovely school building, but there has been a challenge in families sort of understanding that that's where they were assigned to go. So I think as we live in transition, there's some of those transfers that were honored, and again, some that were not, and those are very individualized decisions that I know our policy allows me to have that discretion. So. And then some just went away, right? So then there's always that. But I agree with you, Jeff. That's our goal, is to continue to build up those numbers over.
And I guess my concern is not that the Blythe numbers are too low, but that the Ames numbers and the Central numbers are too high. relative to the Blythe numbers. And the problem is not this year, the problem is next year, because as we know, there's typically a 15% increase in the number of first graders from the number of kindergartners. This year is even higher than 15%. I think it was like 20%. So if we start out the year with 20 kids per section at Ames, and then we get our 15% increase next year, a 20% increase, then we're at 23 or 24, whereas at Blythe it's only going to be at 14. If we get a 20% increase, it's going to be at 16.
But wouldn't some of those, if they're new, be moved to Blythe?
Well, that's my
Well,
question.
the problem is
Right.
you have a lot of flexibility in kindergarten. In first grade, you have much less flexibility because of the older sibling rule, basically. So you have many fewer students to work with, and so you to basically move kids to Blythe, it's going to be much harder in first grade than it is in kindergarten. There's going to be less students to choose from. So I think I'm just concerned that this is putting us in a spot where next year we're going to have very high kindergarten classes, possibly.
Very high first grade.
First grade at Ames and Central. And what I'd be afraid of then is now we got to have to increase even more sections, which, we have enough sections here. We have enough sections.
I guess this is my take on the situation. I mean, I understand how we're concerned about we're striving for small class sizes at all these other schools, and I understand what you're saying. I do see that, and that's sort of the bane of our existence. But Hollywood has the highest class sizes in kindergarten and first grade across the board. I mean, and we grant exceptions every year. And so I guess my thing is, if we're going to start moving kids around, we need to start moving kids around at Hollywood as well. We need to keep the class sizes small. There's plenty of room at the other schools to keep these class sizes low, because we're talking 10% or 20%. We're talking then another 5 kids. That's going to be 29 first graders next year at Hollywood. 29. And so what are we going to do then? And so I'm just saying, we need to move kids around to keep those class sizes.
But historically, we've had these levels where there's 20, 20, 20 at Ames, and the next year it's not 25, 25, 25.
This year's enrollment in kindergarten was the biggest, I think, since the huge bubble that came through 2007, 2008, 2009. Those are the years just prior to the housing crash. This is the biggest year, I think, since then for kindergarten. So this is an unusually large year here. So you're right, in the past we have had, but this year we're starting out fairly high, and so I'm just concerned that we got capacity at Blythe, and we're sort of not using it as well as we could have. Now maybe there are reasons for that, extenuating circumstances, whatever, but it is a concern, because I see next year we're going to be sitting here, and the very strong possibility we're going to be looking at large classrooms.
Right.
To David's point, I think I sort of separated Hollywood because that's what has happened in practice this year and last year, I think. But there's nothing in the policy that distinguishes Hollywood from any other school. The policy says this is the policy.
Exactly, and that's why I think...
And so it's a choice whether or not we move students from Hollywood to Central or something else. That's a choice. And I
mean, that's a choice for all these schools. I mean,
well, yeah, well, actually, the policy is fairly clear. We should be sort of equalizing class sizes, right?
If we adhere to our policies, we would not be having these discussions.
Right.
Well, I will disagree to some degree.
Okay.
So I will also say that making the student assignments in our District 96 schools, and having now done it for 4 years, is very unique and is very complex. Having the big schools and having the small schools. When we come up with what we call an assignable student, so that's a student that does not have a sibling, an elementary school age sibling, already at the school. There were a very small number of Hollywood students that were assignable. So then you automatically kind of enter into this, we're going to be over that 20 number. And then layer on top of that, families that do not have transportation, that crossing First Avenue is a huge challenge for all children. So there are unique issues at Hollywood School that I know I've been part of conversations for several years now. Transferring children from the Hollywood community to Central School is very challenging to do. So it has to be sort of the just right match of the right student who has the right sort of family setup, transportation options, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess I would just say that it's easier said than done, for lack of a better way to say it. And then really, if you look at it, and the board has in front of them, we are over our class size recommended, K-3, 20 students in every first grade, except for at Blythe, we have 2 groupings of 18. So we're close to that 20 number. In kindergarten, we're just below it, and I understand what Jeff's saying. We kind of talked about this idea of saving room, because we do have a phenomenon here that we get a lot of new first graders every year. I think it's because we don't have a full-day kindergarten option, so families go elsewhere for a full-day option, and they come as first graders. So that's a hard number to anticipate and predict. We can look at our data and make some anticipation, and I think Jeff is probably right that we're going to see a 10 to 15% increase in that. So does that mean that more students would get assigned to Blythe? Possibly. That's some of what we did, this year, tried to do this year, but there are challenges in all of it. The principals are very aware that this feels like there were a lot of kindergartners, a lot of first graders this year, a lot of new students to District 96. So I think, Todd Gearman at Ames was saying he has 23 more children overall. I think that's the number at Ames. So, this is a conversation, this is something we've been wondering about. We had a demographic study, but something that we've been wondering about. We've had families sort of anecdotally reporting it to us that the library preschool programs have felt really full, that getting into preschool classes over the past several years has been a challenge. So, enrollment is a significant challenge for us, and I think the student assignment process has been improved, but it's still very challenging.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that, Martha, because it's always going to be a challenge for some of the reasons you mentioned, because some of it, people want to stay in their communities, and the First Avenue issue is really big. It's like a moat. And then trying to distribute our students between staying with the older sibling, it's always going to be a challenge, and we manage it. I think we manage it reasonably effectively, and we do have a lot of supports in all the extra, the parapros and everything else. We are not showing detrimental levels of education because of class size issues. And I think that's where I'd rather step back to is, yes, we violate policy, but this policy is not magic numbers. These numbers can be supported with what we as a district choose to provide in resources.
And we did make an additional assignment of not just the paraprofessionals that are typically assigned to Hollywood, but we assign sort of one, what we call full-time equivalent paraprofessional in anticipation of all these enrollments. And that was through, really clear and careful conversation with the principal there to say, if we anticipate that we're going to have larger than the other buildings, and again, we've been able to keep it under 25. And so, David, to your point of what happens if that number was 29, I don't think we would do 29, right? But I have to see who those real children are in real time to make that determination. So it's, again, it's part of the challenge. We've kind of talked about a number that feels to be too high, and we've had that conversation. And again, there's not magic in that number. I think there's magic in how we staff and support children to make sure that children are learning. Certainly there's an understanding of just our physical capacity, but we very carefully looked at even the square footage of the classrooms, and, our rooms are adequately sized. We've talked about this, why our long-range facility plan exists, that we've talked about needing to have the spaces for the small group and the itinerants, opportunities for classes of groups of kids, 3rd and 4th grade, for example, 2nd and 3rd grade to come together. That's really the design idea behind a multi-purpose room. So I think between updated a student assignment process, between our long-range facilities planning, and also just trying to add predictability and communication to families about how this process really works, I think we're making improvements. But, Joel, to your point, perhaps it's always going to be challenging.
I think it will be, and I think some of it is derived from the nature of having 4 separate elementary schools that are different sizes, and we can't, as a board or even as a demographics person, predict exactly which house is going to go on the market and which house is going to have an extra 2 children in it that we have to support.
I think just another complication, I can think of a couple of families that I know of that have moved technically out of their schools boundary, but their children still go there because they're not going to move their kid to a new school when they're in, whatever grade, 3rd grade or something. So just, as we talk about this, we're talking about new student assignments only, correct? Right. So
once you're assigned to a school, our policy says you get to stay.
You stay at that school,
stay through
right?
5th grade, right?
So if I move all the way down to, the bridge over by
Right.
Blooming Bank, my kids would still go to Ames. That doesn't really help this situation.
If you want, so sometimes families will say, we moved down there, we're now closer to Central, could we move to Central? And that's certainly something we would take into account, but we did talk about that when we updated our policy. Because there are not set boundaries, it's flexible boundaries, there's a challenge in that. And I think there's a challenge for families around anticipation and predictability also. And again, I think we continue to try to build the communication. I think, again, every year I learn something more about how we can share what flexible boundaries really means with families. But when families are, and I know some of you receive some of that information, when they are shocked, they had no idea that they might not be going to a school other than the one that they thought they would be going to, there's a challenge in that. And sometimes for families, the challenge also comes with childcare arrangements that have already been set up, or if it's not a sibling, it's the cousin and it's a shared child. So there are real stories behind the numbers, of course, too. So, and I appreciate that the policy, like Joel, to your point, you say we violate our policy. Our policy says that the board gets to waive this, and that the superintendent has discretion around making those individualized student decisions as well. So I think the policy makes sense. It's just, it's very unique, I think, in terms of how school districts operate, and our buildings are, to have a one-section school on the other side of First Avenue, to have a school that we're trying to sort of build to be more of a 2-section school, and then to have Central that has sometimes been a 4-section school, and Ames that I think sort of matches up well as a 3-section school with the additional space that we can add.
I would also think as the years go on, as this is new, it's the second year with 2 at Blythe, and siblings come along, that it's gonna, it would naturally start evening out a little bit. I mean, that takes years, though, obviously, but I kind of foresee that with you're right, with communication about this is how it is, and with the idea that there's going to be 2 sections there moving forward, so siblings would be,
I think we are definitely in a
gonna take
moment of
some time
transition,
to
and so
even
if the
out.
classes are a little smaller because of the transition, and then over time, people start to understand, well, I think I'm in that area that I might be assigned to either place, or I think I'm in that area that is very likely. We have families calling to say, I hear you do this now, can you tell me where I'll go when my child enrolls? Like, no, I can't tell you. I can't tell you until I know real numbers and, real distances and the assignment process, so.
it's almost like we have to shift the culture kind of.
Yeah, I think there's a culture shift, I think there's a communication part to all of this that is critical.
I think the part we have to sort of accept with these numbers is that next year, I predict that we're going to have fairly large class sizes in 1st grade. A couple of students higher than they would have been if we had fully utilized Blythe Park. Everything were 18 across the board, Hollywood aside. So we just have, we've sort of baked that in at this point in time. It's just like, it's not going to be a surprise next year. Oh, it's like, no, we did, it's already done here.
Right, and it's for that reason alone. We always kick the can. I don't want to be kicking this can down, especially with Hollywood, and seeing the class sizes always going up. The class sizes have been going up and up and up. I know at one point there was 26 people in the 1st grade, then somebody moved out. It's not going to be unreasonable that we might actually have 28, 29 kids next year. And then what are we going to do with them? Are we going to be sending them, we're going to be having to send them across First Avenue, or are we going to, right.
They might have to be.
But I can tell you right now, those 3 people or whoever we transfer across will be at our board meeting telling us why they shouldn't move across the street. And so I guess my thing is, I'd much rather take the pain now to deal with that, because for me, class sizes are important. We need to have small class sizes, especially when the rest of this district has small class sizes. And in fact, I'm looking at most of them are under our policy. And so we've got the space, and I'm talking for kindergarten, I'm talking kindergarten here.
Okay.
And so I really do think we should not be granting the exemptions. especially for kindergarten. I'm going to say especially for kindergarten.
At this point in time, Martha, you've already notified families, right? So
When families started,
it's like- It's already started, right? So
today.
this is a kind of a, for this year, it's a moot point, right? We're not like gonna undo that. We're not gonna say you have to start going to center. So it's more or less, I think, the vote is more or less symbolic, right? But, I mean, I take David's point, I think is correct, that, you know, if we're willing to move families across First Avenue when we have 26 or 27 or 28, well, then that means that you know, there's no principled reason not to move them, you know, when 25 or 24. It's just a choice. So I think it's definitely something that, you know, is something the board should consider in the future.
Part of that could be, I don't know if you could get this information, but helping the board know which of those students is movable, which ones have siblings and which don't. I mean, if they all have siblings, there's nothing we can do about it. Right. So, and it's hard to predict. But,
It's about half. It's about exactly half, basically,
Yeah.
in any given year. So
I think it was much more than half that were not assignable. One of the grades, I can't remember which one. I mean, I have all the data, but
Okay.
yeah, that might.
That was part of your algorithm, wasn't it, John?
I would, on average, it's going to be about half,
It's
50-50.
about half.
I give a given year or given school, it might be different, but
Yeah.
you expect about half.
I mean, because really, I mean, I agree with what you're saying, like your initial comment on this, because I noticed that here too, but really
Yeah.
outside of forcing families to move to Blythe or changing our policy and just saying you're going where we tell you you're going to go and you no longer have flexible boundaries, I mean, what other options do we really have on this?
Or set it, and I think this has been a conversation at the board level for years before I was here, is should there be an establishment of new firm boundaries that
go
extends
forward.
the boundary of Blythe so that it's predictable, it's clearly understood. You know, whether or not, what that truly means for the Hollywood community, I think is still an interesting question. But
That's-
I think that's a question that the board has grappled with before, a different board, this District 96 board, but different people on it. Is it better to set firm boundaries that look different than what they kind of were before?
It will continue.
I'm not
to
sure it
remain-
is.
That's
will-
the entire point of having the algorithm is that,
It will
isn't it?
continue to remain a challenge because when you look at, I'll pick on Hollywood, if one first grader moves into Hollywood, you've now got 26 kids there. One or two kids makes a difference because of the way our schools are structured.
Right, and the fluctuations are going to be large in the small domain, so that,
But if you look at second grade, for example, we have 23 in Hollywood and we have 23 at Central, except for one of the sections has a 22. We have 23 at Blythe and we have the same number at Ames. So
Correct.
there's just a lot of second graders, right? You know, so
Yeah.
23 feels like a very high number, but if you look, it's true across the board. So.
yeah. But the idea of drawing fixed boundaries was the entire impetus of the flexible boundary policy in the first place. That is to say, any time you draw fixed boundaries, it might look good this year, but next year, I guarantee you, it will not look good. It's going to be. So that's the entire point of having the flexible boundaries, is that if you want to have more or less equal class sizes, you have to be able to have some leeway there. And if you don't do that, well, then you're going to accept non-equal class sizes.
I mean, the other option is we change our policy to 25 and now all of this goes away.
Yeah, you could do that too.
Or we just remove them.
Some
Or we
districts,
just say there is no policy.
some districts
on-
do that. They raise their number.
So, I mean, I guess
We've
I
talked
just-
about not doing that because we have a principle that we care about certain ideal numbers.
Yeah, no, and I don't disagree, but
there
if we
are
only
some
have
that
so
do
much
that,
space and, 20 more kids move in than what we expected, then our policy is irrelevant.
Yeah,
Right?
I know.
mean, we can't tell 20 kids they can't go to school in this district.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess I don't
Well,
understand.
there are two slightly different aspects here. One is the what you're talking about, which is sort of like the class size recommendations, and the other consideration is parity between the schools. Do you want to sort of have roughly the same number of students
Sure.
per class each school? And that's a slightly different question of whether the class size. So I think you have to consider both those. But you're right. I mean,
Yeah, but if you look at the higher grades, they are relatively even, but they're all over our policy.
Right.
It's really that starting point of trying to get them there.
And the policy isn't a limit, it's a recommendation. So I think it's just more of a guideline. I wouldn't say it's not a set box that gets crossed.
Right, yeah, we made up
Yeah.
the number, so.
Well,
If I can interject
but
here.
it's not a finite.
We are going to be talking, I did put this on the policy agenda, on our policy, so we will be discussing this.
Again?
Again.
Okay.
Okay, okay.
Okay, is
Marhold?
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber?
Aye.
Mr. Muirhead?
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi?
Nay.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, next item is the budget preparation status.
Good evening. The FY20 tentative budget is included in your meeting materials. It's the same as the draft 2 that we looked at last meeting. With one change, we moved some spending from operations and maintenance to capital, kind of knowing that we're going to spend a little bit more on capital as the projects move forward. It's still a balanced budget, but a little less will be spent on operations and a little more in capital. We still have $1 million a year like we had projected in the past for maintaining the buildings and keeping them operating. If during the year, if we need to transfer more, we'll do that during the year. And if we don't, if we ignore any transfers that may be coming up, we ended the last year at 124% fund balance. And with the reducing operating spending and increasing the revenues, we'd be adding more to fund balance if we come in on budget. So we'd end up the year at 127% based on this budget. So the budget's balanced. In September, we'll have the budget hearing and vote on the adoption. Any questions on the budget?
I'd just take this moment to congratulate you on really paying close attention to some of the other expenditures and the consumables.
Yeah, so in this budget, it's the expenditures, by kind of looking at anything discretionary, we lowered versus last year's budget expenditures by 1.5%, and that includes salary increases and higher benefit costs. So we're able to eliminate positions here and there, but mostly kind of control the services and supplies that we're spending on.
And that's what I'm taking note of, is thank you
Yeah.
for really
Everyone that has
paying
their own
attention to it.
sub-budget was able to cut some. So everyone's keeping a close eye on it.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Mr. Fitton as well for a very, very clearly presented budget. There's just one number I'd like to basically draw attention to, just so people are clear about it, which is the operating surplus. Maybe you could tell us about the operating surplus for last year, budgeted versus actual.
Sure. The table, I wanted to put a few of the past years on there for comparison, but so our budget for the year that just closed, we expected to add almost $800,000 to fund balance, and that's how we budgeted. But the actual numbers, which on this table are called pre-audit, but we haven't had our audit yet, we ended up the year actually adding $2.2 million to fund balance. And then with this tentative budget, we're projecting to add another $1.6 million to fund balance. And we have a history of being able to come in under budget and add to that number. Mm-hmm. So, the 127% could be a little bit higher when
Right.
we get
So
through the year.
the one caveat to the higher surplus, the $2.2 million surplus as opposed to $800,000, is that one caveat is that we spent $1.1 million or $1 million in capital expenditures to buy that property on Harlem and to buy the property in Loudoun, so that it's 2.2 in the operating funds, but we did spend $1 million in the non-operating funds that we didn't budget for, so that it's not as good as it looks. Basically, it's a 1.1 million.
So yeah, paying down
versus
on our debt.
Right.
But I'd also like to point out, though, I mean, this is like my unfortunately my third year on this, but I mean, I know we've been talking to the budget for a long time, and it's always sort of been gloom and doom that the sky's falling sometimes, and it's good to see that the sky doesn't seem to be falling, that we're actually adding to the fund balance, our fund balance is actually going up instead of down, as I know some of the projections were in the past.
Can you ask a favor? Can you speak up just a hair? I can't hear.
Okay.
Your thing.
I guess it's just, we've been told that our fund balance is that we're continue at risk of losing our fund balance, that we're going to be dipping into it, and that our fund balance is actually going up, and it's going up in some states by more than we've expected. So that's good to see. I appreciate that.
Yep. So we kind of planned for maybe not the worst case, but conservatively.
Right.
And fortunately, things turn out more favorable than that.
But I know there's a lot of work that goes into that to make that happen. So I mean, I appreciate that. So.
Further questions?
The next topic is the summer facility work. In May, the board approved this list of facility improvements and equipment purchases. So I wanted to give you an update on the status of them. Most of them are complete or wrapping up, and a couple of them are postponed, but we'll get them scheduled and taken care of as soon as we can. Besides this list, I mean, there's a lot of other routine work that we do in the summer, stripping and waxing almost every floor, and washing windows, and so we get a lot of work done in the summer to be ready for the school year. Okay, thanks.
Right, and last item under old business is the discussion of the District 96 offer to purchase Hollywood Citizens Association property.
So I know this was a fairly significant conversation at the last time the board was together, and at that time I know there was a recommendation to move forward with the forum. I just wanted to share publicly, at this point we haven't heard from the Hollywood Citizens Association in terms of a clear acceptance or refusal of our offer. We had talked about that last time, and really the Landmark has reported that to us, that we don't think that they are interested in our offer. But I wanted some more clarification, an opportunity for the board to have more discussion if needed, but also clarification around the forum. So I don't know if I can anticipate that either the HCA or the village would join us at a forum, and so it becomes a bit, again, wanting the board to be clear on what it is that we're presenting. So even having proposed drawings, we have sort of rendered this idea that we might be able to lease or purchase the east side of the HCA property and develop parking there. We continue to think about this idea of using this village property. I have another meeting set up with the village manager, Brookfield, coming up next week. So again, all these ideas are still very sort of informal or perhaps tenuous, whatever the best word is for that. So I just wanted the board to have an opportunity, again, to continue discussion, to weigh in sort of on what thoughts and expectations you have around a forum. I mean, we have, as I said, I have a rendering of how it might look if we use the east side of the property. We have not looked at a rendering or drawing if we had the entire Hollywood Citizens Association house. We have had some very preliminary conversations about how that village property might work. So again, just a sense of the conversation that we're prepared to have in a forum. I'm very willing to engage the community in this conversation, but I just would want a little more clarity here.
Like an invitation to the Hollywood Association or to the Brookfield.
Have I sent an invitation?
Yeah, have you invited them to say, here are some dates we're thinking about?
I have not
Would you
sent them
like-
what I was
specific
gonna
dates,
ask
but I've sent them
about dates.
email
Okay.
Yeah.
a couple times.
It might be worth just saying,
Yeah. Here's some
settling
dates.
us a couple dates and then setting an
Right.
invitation, say, guys, we would like you to join us if you can, and we'd value your input, and then see what happens, really.
But I guess, sort of in regards to that, I mean, they've been sort of pretty quiet, as we know. They haven't really responded to us at all. But I'd like to go into this forum because, I mean, like I've said before, we spent close to $10,000 already on looking at this property. And so from what I've heard from the community, even though I've been told publicly in the last meeting that I live on the wrong side of Hollywood, I think it's important that we go into the community to this forum with 3 renditions of what we're looking at, because we did make an offer for the property, and I do think it's important that we show the community why we made the offer. I mean, we need to show them what this campus would look like if the school district owned the whole property.
I'm not sure I've seen that.
Well, no,
We don't have it.
No, I'm saying, I know you want to show them, but I want to make sure we see it too. You know what
No,
I mean?
I agree. I'm not, but we need to see it, because the drawings that we have seen, I mean,
You know what I mean?
and we've heard as recently as yesterday, or was it Monday, somebody else out in the community reaching out to us, supporting our idea to purchase the whole property. And so we owe it to the community to show them what this campus would look like if we owned that property. We also owe it to, because we were talking about like the east side of the property, and we do have a rendition of it, and how it's going to, like, the parking was going to come up right up to the house, and it's going to be a tight configuration. And so we need to show those drawings as well. And the third option, which I think we should show them, is if we get rid of parking completely. Now, all 3 options, and just like turn our property into a playground, hard surface, soft surface, and just get rid of the parking and move parking off site. All 3 options require input from all 3 parties, like the village, the HCA, and us. And so we need to show the community, this is why we did this. This is what we think is best for the school, best for the students. But if we don't go down this route, this is what we think is otherwise. And if we don't go down this route, this is the other option. Otherwise, we are not going to be able to do an addition. We're still going to have play and parking together. I mean, there's really, if we're trying to do what we want to do for the school and do what we're doing for all the schools here, I mean, we need more space. And so I would like to ask that we commission our architects to draw 3 renditions. I know we have 1 already, but I'd like to commission 2 more renditions that show what what the campus would look like without the house there, and that we owned it. We had a play area, we had adequate parking, adequate play. And then also, if the HCA says no, what's it going to look like if we just turn that parking lot into a playground and we move parking off site somewhere? Now, granted, that's going to need village approval as well, because we're going to need to find parking for our staff somewhere.
I think HCA is just slow to respond to us. They noted, if I remember correctly, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, that they're off for the summer. So, given human nature, this is our public ask for Martha to issue an invitation and coordinate some kind of meeting dates, and for the community to step in a little bit and push HCA to step up and agree to meet.
Right. No,
This really, and I'm not stepping on what you're saying, but I think we have the desire on the board side, the district side, to talk. And so we need HCA to step up and talk too.
Right, no, and I
take some of those
What
ideas.
the addition you're talking about is getting more renderings.
getting more revenue, because that's what I keep hearing from the community. I mean, everyone I've talked to in the community wants to see what's it going to
I
look like.
completely understand what you're saying, but I also hesitate in spending the money on something that might not be an option. If the answer is no tomorrow, I don't want to spend money designing something that's a no.
I understand that, but I guess the thing is, we're spending millions of dollars, and we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on new property. What is it going to, I mean, is a couple thousand, I have no idea how much these renderings are cost, but what's a few more $1,000s going to really set us back to show the community what we have, I mean, what we want to do?
I don't think it sets us back, but I think we should also go with what's realistic. And right now, we do have a public response from HCA saying, well, we're certainly willing to negotiate with you and deal on the east side. And it's written, it's a public editorial letter.
But I'm going to tell you.
So that's out there.
Right, but we also know that the HCA has gone back on their word in the past. And I hesitate to take anything that they say right now at face value, because even though they're off for the summer, we know they're not really off. They're still renting the house out. There's still people going in and out. I mean, today, in fact, during the school, there was somebody there who was going in and out of the house during the school hours. Yeah. So we know that, yeah, they might be off, but they're not technically off. They're not be meeting as a board. But I guess the getting back to the main point is we owe it to the community to give 3 renditions. Because we didn't make this offer sort of in haste and just sort of in passing. We gave it a lot of deliberation. And we owe it to the community to show why we're going to do it, what we can do with the campus, and the other option of the east side of the building, and then moving parking off campus. Just so this is what we can, these are the options.
Question about what you're saying. Was that even part of the visioning process when they asked the staff and the principal what they wanted to do? Do we even know the answer about what they want to do with that? If you wanted the whole piece, I haven't ever heard that. And
So
that's
I
a
think,
problem. You know,
well,
you don't know
it's
what
stated
you're
as a
gonna use
broad
it for.
goal, right? So it's
Right.
separate play and parking and be able to build that addition.
Right,
And
but
so
that's a
then
lot
that-
different than asking for renderings to have to be semi-specific. I mean, doesn't have to
Renderings
be,
get specific.
doesn't have to be perfect, but that's a huge
I think
question.
the idea of a rendering would be parking and play.
Right, and we have one rendering that does that, but I personally think that rendering is horrible because it's a massive 29 spot parking lot. It's a
23.
huge parking lot.
23,
Yeah.
23, not 29.
29 is what I counted, I think, on the one I saw. But it's massive. That takes up an enormous fraction of that entire lot. And it's like, I don't want to go to the community and say, this is our vision. I think it's a terrible vision. I think that's like,
Well, and I
so
think
I'm
that's what-
hesitant to go to the community with stuff that we haven't even sort of.
Yeah, I don't feel like we
and
talked about it at all. And-
Well, I don't think the plan, so I feel like I'm arguing both sides here because I actually don't support the rendering simply because I don't think we're at a point where we even know what's possible. But if we did have renderings, they would certainly be passed through the facilities committee and the board before we would take them public. So I don't think that,
Yeah.
to me, that would
Right,
not be
and that-
even okay.
That takes
Right,
time
I
as
mean,
well.
we wouldn't just
Right, and that would
design
take a long time, and that's
does
not going to
take
happen
time.
next week, right? Whereas I thought our idea for the sort of forum was
Get
relatively
input,
soon,
get
right? Was to
input.
get input.
Right.
But I think this is my question, and this is why I think this conversation is very important, is as a representative of the school district who's willing to facilitate the forum, what conversation am I facilitating?
Right.
Am I asking a broad, open question? Am I proposing some sort of potential design ideas that we have, we have talked about the east side, we actually have that rendering. We've talked about this village property that we don't have a clear path to.
Could I just ask, or just interject one thing there on that village property? I think just to be clear for the public and the what we're talking about. I think there's some. It's not clear to me that we're on the same page there. Is that we're not talking about blocking any access road. We're
Right.
not talking about putting up any gates or anything like that. There's a strip of land between the parking lot of the zoo and that access road that is wide enough for angled parking. So you could put angled parking in that strip of land. I don't know how many spots. Joel, maybe you remember how
I
many.
want to say about 9,
Okay, so you put
plus or
angled.
minus.
I thought it was more. I thought
I
it
thought it
was
was
more
like
than that, but-
19.
Well,
I thought it was like 19, I
make
thought
it
20.
bigger, small.
That you would basically just extend the parking that's currently on Gulf around the corner, so no trucks would be stopped, no zoo access would be blocked, the zoo would not be involved in any way whatsoever as far as, or inconvenience in any way whatsoever. So that's the part of land we're talking about, just so we're all clear about that. So anyway, just to interject that point.
So you're saying a
I
double
mean,
width of
in
9
certain,
or is
I
it-
don't
I
think
think
it's
it's-
interject, Martha, but I mean, the
20,
thing is,
19, yeah.
the thing is, it all depends how we do this community forum. Because I've heard like people in the community saying, "Well, let's just put a second floor onto Hollywood." I mean, there's a lot of good ideas, but not a lot of practical ideas, and so that's why I really think we need to come, even if there maybe just conceptual drawings of what we would like to do, because. I mean, there's a lot of ideas out there, but I mean, we spent the money. We've looked at this. We've done surveys. We know what we can and can't do there, and so that's why I think we need to go with some sort of drawings to show what the campus will look like.
I would go maybe a slightly different direction. I hear what you're saying. I think that's one possible approach. The approach that I think I would advocate is just say, look at how much land is here. Whether you have the Hollywood Association house and land or not, it's just not a lot of land, basically, for separating plane parking. If you're going to put parking here, it's going to take up a lot of land. And there's no two ways around. You can figure it different ways, but if you're going to put 29 parking spots there, you're going to take up a lot of land. So I think the argument I would make is, hey, there's another solution which we could alleviate most of the parking without inconveniencing the zoo or anyone else if we can acquire this land from Brookfield. And I would take that to the community and say, hey, if this sounds like a good idea, community, to free up more land for the Hollywood students and for the Hollywood school and for the Hollywood Association, if that all works out, then let's collectively go to the village of Brookfield and try to acquire that land. Because no one loses in that. No one loses in that approach. And I think the school gains, I think the kids gain, and I think the community gains. So that's the approach I think I would take as a starting point. And then people say, oh no, this is a terrible idea.
Right.
And we could step back and do something else.
Well, I know that's one of the ideas, but I think we need to go with 3 drawings to show what you were just talking about, to show the parking to the east, and then to show what the campus is going to could look like, not will look like, but could look like if we had the entire.
Is there
property.
really a magic number that we need to come to the meeting with? And again, anything at this point that we're drawing up new is delaying this form.
But I think the drawings are because that is one thing I hear, regardless what side of the aisle you fall on.
Right.
That's what people want to see.
I also think for me, and this is just from my own perspective, the benefit of community forum is that the conversation is happening. So right now, for whatever reasons, we have not heard back. Like, I would just like to hear back so we can move forward, you know? So for me, the community forum is just getting all the parties together, let's talking about it. If it's a no, it's a no. Then here's our other options. If it's a yes, it's yes, and here's options. Until we hear, like, I just hesitate spending money on something until we hear an answer.
Yeah,
You know?
I want an answer.
I mean, I think, let's be honest, I think we all know the answer. We just haven't gotten it
Then
publicly.
then I guess the thing is we all know the answer and they're not going to sell to us, or not even. Then we
Well,
just.
But then that's the opportunity in the
But
community forum for everybody to say what they, like,
But we
for all
had that.
parties to be
We had a
discussing
forum
it.
already, and they've already. It was discussed at that forum, and
What forum?
there was
think
well
that
not
was the-
Community engagement sessions,
community engagement
yeah.
sessions.
What about just taking the 2 renderings that we've already seen? One is the parking along the zoo there, which you can draw on a few more spots or whatever. I mean, it's just, you could draw the ruler, right? And then the rendering that they gave us with the 29 parking spots. Say, hey, here's the 2 we've gotten so far. You can reconfigure the parking space if you want, but if you're going to put 29 spots there, it's, that's just land. You're not going to get, it's not magic. I mean, so.
Let me ask Martha. Do you have any idea what it would cost to do a drawing? Do we have a
So the drawing represents the structural analysis that relates to underground utilities. So we know that the village property, what we think we know, and this is is that it requires tree removal, it requires removal of some electrical power source. So to do the rendering is no longer let's take the land and draw some lines. It's really an analysis of, is it really feasible? So we don't have that one, right? The only one we've really asked, where we've had structural engineers come and look at the property and understand where utilities, what would need to be moved, how do we fit a recommended number of parking spaces. The only one we have is that one that takes an assumption of either a lease or a purchase of that east side of the property. So to get one for the village property does require, like a true rendering does require sort of investing in some analysis, which we haven't done.
Permission from the owner as well, correct?
Which is the village, right?
Right.
The village of Brookfield. And that's been mixed. I mean, there was a village manager change, and so what we understand from one versus the new one is, I don't know if it's different or not. We just don't have enough clarity there yet. And then the other question is, do you want to look at it without the HCA house? Because that's a question, that's a conversation. We have not asked our architects to do that. So it's not so much that I think the drawing costs money, it's that what is represented in the drawing costs money.
You're just asking for a schematic, David. You're not talking about, you just want to see like, roughly speaking, this is what it's going to look like.
Exactly.
We already have that, I think, other than one without the HCA house. And personally, I think it's a little bit presumptuous to draw architectural plans where we erase the HDA housing without, like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, we don't own that land.
But I guess
like-
it's presumptuous for us to draw the property, to draw the parking spaces to the east of it, because we don't own that land as well. And so I guess we've done this, we've made presumptions on Brookfield property we don't own, presumption on HDA property we don't own. I'm just asking possibly for one more drawing.
Well, the Brookfield property was actually brought up by the village of
Right, we
Brookfield.
didn't- we didn't
But to
that
Jeff's
idea.
point,
They
though,
came
we
to
don't
us.
own this property, and we've made
Well,
drawings
As
based
far as-
on
But
that.
they were partnering with us.
But they were a
Yeah.
partner and they were a willing participant in that discussion.
And I
They
think
were
that-
interested in how that would look. I mean,
Right,
they
I
did
think-
ask us, what would that
The
look
HCA
like?
was open to seeing how the parking would look along
Yeah.
the side of their house too. I don't think they were opposed to that, but I suspect they'd be opposed to us drawing a rendition where we.
But
house eliminated
but
it.
the community would not be opposed to that. The community
Maybe
wants to
not.
see
No,
that.
maybe not. But
The
again,
community wants to see that.
conceptually, it seems to me you just erase the house mentally, right? And then you say the house is not
doesn't
there.
feel
I don't
right.
see. I don't see
Yeah.
why we need to.
Well, that goes back to the idea of the forum. You have discussion. It's not
I thought it
a
was about
lecture.
discussion, more
exactly.
general.
It would be,
yeah.
you're hearing from all parties, all
Right.
sides, including residents, hopefully a lot of residents.
Yeah, I don't think we need the renderings at this point. I think it needs to be a discussion about what people
I'd like
want all around. All the groups should be there.
I think I'd like, Martha, if you could, I would propose that Martha formally reaches out to HCA and starts to schedule a forum, date, time for us to talk with the boards of HCA and District 96 and the community, and really open up the forum to how many different ideas can you come up with. And that's the whole point of kind of conceptualizing and brainstorming about what is the best solution for Hollywood House, Hollywood School, and the community as a whole.
Given the number of parties involved, a huge number of parties, HCA's many people, the school board's many people, the community's many people, the Brookfield's many people, like it's gonna be impossible to schedule something that works for everyone. I mean, it almost makes sense to me to say, find out a date that works for us and say, we're gonna have it this date and we would like to invite you to
Please
come.
come, yeah.
And
But
As
the
many-
problem then being is if it's a date that doesn't work for other people, and
Well,
then
it's
again,
gonna-
it's just a conversation with Martha and residents.
Well, could it
Right,
just-
I
We
hear
don't-
what
yeah.
Jeff
well,
is
that's-
saying, that if you
could
put a
just
point
some
in
of them
time on the
come.
calendar,
Yeah.
it's a target there, and if
Yeah.
people aren't able to attend, they're not able to attend. But if we start trading off dates, it's going to be hard to ever achieve a true
Yeah, and hopefully
consensus.
some of them could come, and we may not get all board member
Right,
individuals.
I think there's
but-
half a dozen people on the Hollywood Association
But I want to
board,
hear
some
from
of them should be
the
available.
community members too. And
Right.
so if we advertise it early enough, maybe
Right, but again,
they could come.
I'm telling you, the community wants to see renditions. And if we're going to go there just asking for ideas,
I
I mean,
haven't heard that yet.
I'm just saying, we're going to go there, we're going to get all these ideas, and all of them are going to be good, but not all of them are going to be practical.
And
That's okay. I think it's okay to hear lots of
Okay.
things.
Well, can we use the two renditions that we have already, the two crude renditions?
We don't really have a rendition of the village property, is that what you're talking about?
We have a crude one. I remember that was sent out some time ago, just showing markings where the thing would be. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not drawn to.
Right, the only
There's
issue,
something there.
possible only issue with that is if it's actually not feasible, and then we're having a conversation about a plan that in
Not
the end
feasible
doesn't-
because
So then-
Brookfield doesn't want to
then-
do it.
so
Or no, not feasible because of, we haven't done a structural study, and we don't know what's
That's-
under
that's-
there.
it ends
You
up
know.
being more a matter of cost than
Right.
anything else.
The one rendition we have, we
It
know
is
because
cost
we have the
prohibitive,
structural
yeah.
analysis, so we know it's a feasible
Or would the
plan.
village opt to not lease or sell it to us?
But it would be better to know if the village is willing to lease or sell that piece of property before we spend a whole bunch of time and effort trying to further.
I mean, yeah.
We might find out more information at the community forum, but from what's
Well,
been in the paper
exactly,
so
that's
far, the
what-
current answer would seem to be no.
That's the point.
Right. All right,
So Martha, do you have clear direction? I guess I want to make sure you have clear direction.
David, that's a great question.
Could we diagram this
Right.
conversation?
I think it strikes me that there are different impressions, opinions of how this would go. That I've heard everything from sort of this being like a tri-board meeting, right, with a board of the HCA, the board of the district, the board of the village, which we're saying is probably not realistic, to something that's facilitated just by the school district, really like just by me, let's say Jim and I, or Jim and Kim Hefner and I, or something like that. That is sort of more of a brainstorming session, to more of a, here are our proposals, we want specific feedback. So yeah, I do have a question in my mind. Like, so maybe the better way to say is, what would people want the outcome to be? Is just to have heard from the community around impressions and opinions about the space, the solutions that separate play and parking and allow us to do this addition.
I would imagine that we would have, at a minimum, a majority of this board and a majority of the HCA board sitting around a table, and whatever community people show up, and
So we'd have to make it a special meeting.
we'd have to make it a special meeting, but that's not hard to do. We just announce
Be
it.
a special
and
meeting with its own agenda that we'd have to agree
It's
to
a
with the
meeting. It's out
HCA.
there, and it's either here or it's at Hollywood House or wherever it happens to be. And everybody talks about these ideas, and HCA has already said that they're willing to deal on the east side of their property. So if there's something beyond that they're willing to suggest, so be it. But we have to discuss this with them and not just with us 8 right here. And that's why I'm saying I think Martha reaches out, you reach out to HCA, here's a date, here's another date, here's a third date. When are you guys available?
I also could see it being a meeting that's not a special meeting of the board, and that if board members want to go and attend and listen, they can, but that there would just be some representatives of the
Yeah,
board.
there'd have to be somebody from administration answering questions.
Right, no, that would be, like Martha
Right.
and Jim and Kim would
Which
be
we've
there.
done before,
but
we've
the-
gone and listened.
Yeah, but 7 board members
right.
don't necessarily need to be involved in the conversation, because what the goal
We're
of that
here
is
to learn,
listen.
yeah.
I mean,
So-
yeah.
Okay.
To
Like,
Linda's point, to Linda's point, I mean, if it's just to listen to gather information, we don't need to have a special board meeting because we're just gathering information.
I mean, that was always, that's where I
That was kind of my
picturing
impression,
it,
but
because I feel that the main issue right now is we can't get all the parties to talk, and this was just an opportunity that was open to get everybody talking so that decisions can be made and progress can be moved forward in whatever the best decision for the community was. That was my understanding of it, but that was just.
It's really more about the residents than anything else.
absolutely,
We know-
they need to be able to
we think
say
we
what they
know
want to
The board
say.
is going to say, even though they haven't ever said anything directly to us, it's all been through the press, which
Right.
is annoying. But
The residents, we've had very limited engagement here. We've had very positive engagement through our
Community engagement sessions, right, yeah.
from parents. But
Yeah.
there's a huge gap of that population that hasn't said anything. 10 random emails, half going one way, half going the other way. I mean, it's hard to really tell truly how people.
You might have the same problem with the.
We
I
might.
don't expect 500
Yeah.
people to show up. I expect
No, right,
so-
but at least that's an extra effort to get to where we need to get to. You know, like it's let's
I
open.
mean, at least we're showing we're trying.
Right, and I really feel like it's just like opening the doors. Let's have a real conversation so that we can move forward instead of just, and like. I don't know if you want, Dan, if you want.
Let Mr.
that's,
We will have additional public comment at the end. Just so you know. Okay.
Just want to make sure we saw you.
I'm at the
To me,
point
it
that
just
Linda's
seems like
at.
there's a lot of private, individual, one-on-one conversations that are going on. I heard this, I was told this, I was at this place, this person said
Yeah, I
this to me,
certainly
here's a
didn't
random
have-
email. And,
yeah.
But there's been no open dialogue and no
Right.
real firm commitment except from a handful of people that feel passionately about this one way or the other. So, but I agree with you. I mean, that is 5 people could show up.
Right,
And then
right,
the whole-
right.
It's like, all right, well,
But-
that was pointless. But I mean, at least we gave people an additional opportunity
You have
because
to
they
give
can't
people,
do that
you have
here.
to give people
so-
an opportunity to
Yeah.
come and speak if
And
they want to speak.
Yeah, and I think it's just personally a good idea to get us all on the same we're all partners in this. We all want the best outcome.
Right.
You know, and so together we need to sort through this. And so that, for me, I was hoping the community forum would be just that. Like, the community's talking, representatives from the HCA are there to be able to talk openly. You know, we have
From the village as well, from
yeah,
the field as well.
you know, like, just so that we can all agree that we're in this, you know, like, the intent is the same everywhere. Everybody wants the best for the community. So let's figure that out.
Although I'm gonna say I'm not holding my breath on the village showing up for this, because everything from them has been, we don't want to be involved. Go figure it out on your own. So, but it'd be great to have them there.
That was
Hopefully they
my
would show
point
up.
to saying that really it's HCA and District 96 who needs to be talking.
And the sooner the better, so we can move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I don't see any reason to delay.
So the ideal though would be the board plus the HCA board posted as a special meeting and have this conversation.
If we do
You
it
don't
as
think
a
it's
special
realistic?
meeting, are
Well-
we constrained by?
As a forum, yeah. I'm in agreement with that as well.
With what?
With that, I don't think we need a special meeting. A
Just
community
administration
forum.
facilitates it. The board can be present if they'd like to be, but it's really not a board-to-board
Administration should
conversation.
answer
Right.
questions.
Yeah, it's
We're
not our
not there to tell
Yeah,
people what
I'm
to
fine with
do.
that. I think I've heard both, so I just wanted to be
No.
as clear as possible.
I
So
want I want to listen and learn.
Yeah.
That's my opinion,
Yeah.
because they have a right to speak to us.
I'm fine with that, but I think, right, an administration facilitated meeting versus sort of an open board meeting of two boards, that's different. So where I think we're landing is something facilitated by the administration, hopefully with participation of the HCA, maybe some more clarity from the village, and set a date, invite them, and move forward.
Is that-
Okay, I feel
is that
clear.
preference? Are there any
I
others?
think I would slightly prefer, I think that's fine. I think I would agree with Joel, though, that a special meeting would allow board members to say things, and there might be points in the conversation where if just saying something, because you've been thinking about it for a long time, could open up new ideas that otherwise wouldn't have happened. So that's my only,
Or we just send 2 board members.
yeah,
Well,
that's not
I know, I mean,
Yeah, that's hard.
That's not ideal.
It's hard,
Yes.
I know.
If we make it a special board meeting, are there certain stipulations that go with that? Or could we make it a special
No,
board
you
meeting?
just
to
call it a
have
special board
dialogue
meeting.
and just-
well,
We just have
Announce
to
it.
declare
we
it.
had the
You have to post an agenda.
The strategic plan.
strategic planning
Yeah.
stuff, you just
Yeah.
basically have a social meeting, you sort
Call
of
it.
start the meeting, and then you just, now we can talk.
Is
I
Just
guess
a
that's
whole
fine. I don't
open
mind
public
that. I just
comment
don't want it
meeting?
to be a
Okay, all right.
requirement that we tell
Right,
people.
if it delays it.
It's the
Yeah.
fact that we can't be talking without public knowledge.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that's why
We just
I'm
need to make the
suggesting
declaration. We can,
Special
okay.
board meeting allows I and David to have quality discussions, and I and Linda and Jeff, and
That's fine.
To me, that's why I'm thinking special board
Okay.
meeting is.
I guess
get-
by that,
it means
that by
we're
its
not-
nature, though, we might not hear more, we would probably hear less from the community, correct?
Well, we don't have to say anything at all, but it gives us the opportunity to be
Yeah,
able
like,
to
I'm
respond.
not sure if you
to
were the
call.
strategic planning, like,
Right, it
we
was
called
more
a
of
meeting
a
and then the meeting happened and it wasn't like.
community
we were
brainstorm.
running
I
it.
certainly
Yeah,
don't
okay,
want it to
okay.
look
No.
as formal. I think it should be more of a community feel.
But then if it's a special meeting, you have to have a quorum, right? So then
Yes.
Guarantee that
Yes.
4 of us.
I think we can
Four
get
of us
the 4 of
better show
us.
up.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm just trying to think out loud of the things that could,
And if the community has, if this goes back to Leslie and David, is if the community wants to have significant input, then they have to show up too.
Yeah.
And same
Yeah.
thing with HCA, show up.
That's fine, that's
And
fine.
then, I guess my last comment would be, how do we make sure that we are advertising this so that people actually know about it?
Well,
Because I'm
Bob
gonna
can tell.
guess most people don't know that these meetings are, even though we public,
We try.
whatever we do,
We try.
we're not sending mailers out, we're not blast emailing everybody.
Well, we
Like,
can
how do
put it
we
in the
actually get
landmark.
this? Because
I think,
didn't the HCA say they were gonna send out flyers or something
They
to the
did.
community? They did do that?
No, they never did.
Oh, they never did that, okay.
What
So,
about advertisement, like in a landmark, just put an advertisement, just big, you know.
that's not a bad idea, yeah.
We could also send a note to all of our community people who came.
Spread the
and
word.
ask them to participate as well.
I mean,
And
I think
certainly-
we don't do that, I think it's gonna be a big miss.
and I think
Oh, I agree.
from a
Yeah, no,
school
you have
perspective, we
to,
can
you
certainly
have to.
use our school messenger and our communication systems.
So-
That reaches only as we know our
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's parents only. so-
Revisit what we did for strategic plan a few years ago.
Yeah.
So that we can reach as many as we can get.
Right, that's a good point, is to get people who are not tapped into the schools.
Right.
You need something else, and I think the landmark reaches a lot of.
It does.
Into
Yeah,
the
no,
website
that's
and all
a,
that.
yeah,
so.
that's good.
Landmark and
and I'm sure we have some community members who will gladly spread the news.
Okay.
Spread the news.
Thank you. This is a lot of additional clarity, and I appreciate it.
Okay. So I'm going to ask that question one more time. You're good.
I'm good. For now.
Oh, for now, okay.
Thank you for asking, Dave. 'cause I was sitting here going, I'm not sure I even understand that.
All right.
All right. We ready to move on?
Oh, I can't wait for this.
This is the most exciting part of the meeting for me.
Yes.
So, okay, so next is...
You can take it over, Dan,
Yeah.
if you want.
I think it feels like we should have a public comment now so that
Get on this.
Mr. Becker doesn't have to sit
Well,
through
what if there's
policies.
comment about construction or something?
Yeah. Keep it as is. Okay, so next is new business.
Yes.
So, David, we have Press 101, first reading.
Yes, so we have a number of policies that have been up for review. Some are 5 years, and then there's 3 on here that are not part of the IASB. So, seeing then, this is the first time I'm doing this. I'm just going to go through, read the policies, and then we can have discussions on it. Okay?
Not the whole, you don't need to read the whole.
I gotta be home. I gotta be home before midnight tonight. Okay.
Bonus points for setting it to music.
Okay. Policy 2:110, qualifications, term, and duties of board members. Policy 2:140, communication to and from the board. Exhibit 2:140-E, guidance for board member communication, including email use. Policy 2:230, public comments at Board of Education meetings. Policy 5:180, temporary illness or temporary incapacity. Policy 6:40, curriculum development. Policy 6:340, student testing and assessment program. And now the 5-year, there are 6, there's more than 6, there's 8 policies needed for 5-year review. That's policy 2:240, board policy development. Policy 3:60, administrative responsibility of the building principal. Policy 3:90, activity funds. Policy 5:35, compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act. Policy 5:40, communicable and chronic infectious disease. Policy 5:130, excuse me, responsibilities concerning internal information. Policy 6:110, programs for students at risk of academic failure and or dropping out of school and graduation incentive programs. Policy 7:170, damage to school property. And then there are 3 additional ones that I'd like to discuss as well. And that is policy 2:220, Board of Education meeting procedure. Policy 5:330, sick days, vacation, holidays, and leaves. Exhibit 7:30-E1, class size policy. So, I've gone through these policies, and most of them are administrative changes, just sort of updates to legal references. Though I did want to talk about a couple of them, specifically the policy 2:110, board of officers. Let me first throw this out there. Does anyone have any discussions? Does anyone have any comments or discussions on these before I dive into any of them? No. All right. Okay. So one policy I want to talk about was policy 2:140, communication to and from.
Actually, we want to talk about 2:110 first.
Oh, 2:110.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Policy 2:110, board officers. That we want to look at the role of the secretary and the secretary to the board. So essentially, Wesley and Margie's roles. We've talked to our legal counsel, and they'd like to tighten up. They would like to put a little bit more clarity around these roles, and so we don't have their input yet on that, but that's one thing we'd like to do, so we'd like to come back to that at another time.
Yeah, so this one is, they define the non-board member, who's Margie, and then, but really several years ago, the board decided to add a board officer of a secretary. So this is just inconsistent with our practices, and I think our practices are clear and were developed for all the right reasons. It's just the policy should be a little more reflective. So we'll just make that, we'll bring a proposed adjustment on that.
Right. And then also sort of the one that we're also having seeking input from legal review is 2:230, public comment, surrounding the public comment. We'd like to tighten up that language because it's really, if you read the policy, I personally think it's poorly worded, and it says there's like putting minimum lengths of time for public comment versus maximum lengths of time. So we just want the legal to take a look at that and get their input on tightening that language up.
And then the same with that 2140 speaks about communications to and from the board. So it speaks about sharing all electronic communication every board meeting. So as we know, sometimes the board gets communication. It's all valuable, but it will be about, a relatively minor topic. So it doesn't really mean that any and all communications are supposed to come back to public meetings. So we're going to take a look at that one as well.
And then there was another one that...
On this 230, this is the one that public comments at board meetings?
Correct.
Everything highlighted in green, I take it as the proposed changes that the
Right.
press. What are your thoughts on this business about the minimum and the maximum and all the rest?
Well, I guess my thought is that I think it's important. I think public comment is important. I think, though, that we need to tighten the language up and possibly put a maximum length of time people can talk. I know we have like 5-minute time limit per speaker, and there's a minimum length of time per subject matter. I think we should probably maybe put in a maximum length of time per subject. So if you've for example, like the HCA, if we were actually going to go forward with buying it, we might want to say one side can speak for 30 minutes, the other side can speak for 30 minutes, 6 people can speak on each side, essentially maximum, not to exceed 30 minutes. That's what I'm thinking, because I'm thinking, because these
It seems like all this language is new, like previously there was no minimum. That says, for example, the first line says for an overall minimum of 30
Right.
minutes.
That's
There's no
very
minimum in the
strange.
past. To me, it seems like, why do we, the system we have doesn't seem to be broken. It seems like we get public comment, people talk, it's like no one abuses it.
I like that we added the second
And
one.
if we want to, if we feel like we need to tighten it, the board president can say, okay, let's speed it up a bit. So why do we have to get into all this, now it's 30 minutes minimum and 20 minutes maximum and blah, blah. To me, it's almost impossible to set those numbers, other than in a totally arbitrary way. So why do it? I mean, what's the point of all this? I see no
don't understand this
reason
either.
to get into that in this.
Well, it seemed to me too that the only time when these, when the minimums and maximums would be coming about would be a point of something would be contentious. So
Right, and we might
by
want
the
to
time
have
you
say,
try to
okay,
cite,
yeah, and it's like we need to hear more,
Yes,
basically.
exactly.
So why even have
Yeah,
these
the
things?
minimum strikes me as
Crazy.
sort of a strange
Yeah,
thing to be
it's very
added in.
strange.
So that's, our attorney did take a look at this and felt that the language was kind of overly expansive. Again, not to limit or reduce public comment. I
Sitting
know-
around, coming up with
Counting
changes for
minutes
no
is a-
reason. We're paying them to do that, and it's just wasting
But
our
I do
time.
think there are school boards who have a lot of contentious public comments all the time.
Right, but that
And
probably
so-
has to do with the school board, right?
Well,
It's
right, but
so-
so I'm saying, I think maybe that's why
Yeah.
these policies
Right.
are
We need to
developed.
But I don't think we
tailor
need this. We
No,
don't
I
need
don't
any
think
of this,
we
right?
need it.
I think our current policy is totally fine, I think. Don't you think? I mean, it's like...
I think
mean, I have
adding
an
the
opinion.
second public comment has been immensely helpful so that you can actually comment. And I've been to meetings as a parent, and you don't want to comment at the beginning until you've heard what was discussed. And I really like that we added it at the end, and I feel like it gives people an opportunity to listen and respond. And to say it has to be 30-minute minimum, I just don't understand how that's useful or relevant for us.
It is interesting how they use a minimum and not a maximum.
All right, yeah.
So, that is so I mean,
But it sounds like as well that we're getting attorney feedback on this, so this is
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
something that we'll be acting on until after we've received that feedback.
Exactly.
yeah,
So-
I would like to hear what they say
Right.
probably, and then, I mean, in the end, like you're saying, Jeff, it's probably very arbitrary because we have a
Well, it's arbitrary.
well-functioning
Right.
process.
Yeah, exactly. And it takes up time for us to think about it, and it's like...
So, and then there was, then I guess in regards to the policies that we've added, there was one policy that I wanted to talk about, actually 3 policies I wanted to talk about. The first one was policy 2:220, Board of Education meeting procedures. That policy, in there, it deals with voting and how the board votes. And Martha and I did talk about this to some extent. The board doesn't vote necessarily according to Robert's Rules of Order, and that's what that means essentially is that a minority of the board can carry a decision on vote. So essentially, if everyone abstained but only one person voted in favor of it, of a motion, that motion would carry.
Right.
I personally find that sort of very goes against all of our democratic principles, that one person could carry something like that. However, given Illinois and what have you, the school board has apparently this is pretty much enshrined in law, and so we really can't change this policy. Yeah. But that being said, though, nonetheless, I would like the board to possibly consider possibly writing our representative here, because this, I mean, in all our history class, in our classes we teach our kids about education. I mean, about democracy. And democracy is always the majority, and if we don't follow, I guess, rules of order, where a minority can carry a vote, I think we need to ask our legislature, just as we did ask the Department of Transportation for to look at the crosswalks at First Avenue. I think we need to write our representative as a board. I'd like our board to write to our representative asking them to reevaluate this policy and ask that we can for them to change it, because I do not think one person on a board should be able to pass any resolution.
I take your point, David. I would say, though, that to my mind, an abstention is not a no vote. An abstention is a specific, purposeful vote. Yes, exactly. Someone's deciding to stay out or stay out of the discussion or not record the vote. If we get to a situation where we have one person carries a vote and the rest are abstentions, obviously those abstentions were made for a reason. If people are in opposition to it, they're free to vote no. I'm not sure that I see a point in discussing this or bringing up a letter to ask the legislature to change this.
I guess the thing is, the legislature follows Robert's Rules of Order, where an abstention is, while it's counted as an abstained vote and doesn't take a side, it doesn't count as a yes vote. And essentially, an abstention in that type of situation would count as a yes vote. That's how we have it written.
Again, I don't know that I agree with you on that. An abstention is an abstention. I think kind of what you're saying is that you would like for resolutions to pass with a majority of the vote. Is that, or a majority of those present?
I'd like the resolutions to pass with a majority of those voting yes.
So a majority of the quorum.
Right, voting yes, correct.
Is it possible to bring this back with supporting documentation? Because I'm not exactly clear on, I would have to, like what you're saying about Robert's Rules, I haven't studied that, so.
And I guess what I'll say, and we can certainly look at Robert's Rules, is that because it is based on the Illinois School Code,
Yeah.
it is not a modifiable
Right.
policy. So I think, and that's exactly what you're saying, is it's not modifiable, but would there be other sort of board support or action for something other than that? And again, this is one where I don't have a strong opinion, other than I understand that it is not modifiable because the Illinois School Code is so clear about this.
I kind of feel like it again is rewriting a policy to address a worst case situation that has never happened. I mean, we've had one issue where there's,
Right. Two people voted yes for it out of a quorum, so.
Yeah, the only time in my memory that I voted abstain was simply because I didn't feel like I had enough information to answer yes or no.
And I'm not
Yeah, it doesn't- yeah.
I don't have issues with people who vote abstain. I'm just saying that.
Feel like I had enough.
So I think what you're trying to say is you may have voted no, but you abstained and two people voted yes and motion passed. Or
Right.
later, a month later, you're like, oh, I really wish I'd had that information. I would have voted no.
But I'm not going to vote for something if I don't feel
Right, I mean,
I think what, I'm just saying, I think what David's saying is if only two people are voting yes, one person votes
Right.
no, and everybody else abstains, and that passes, and now all those abstentions a month later are like, I really wish I had that information. That wouldn't, you're saying you would want that to not be able to pass unless 4 yeses, regardless of abstentions.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
It's pretty rare.
think there was one. I don't know. It was a couple months ago.
yeah, it was-
Maybe
Yeah.
it was on the relay thing or something.
correct,
There
yeah.
was one, yeah.
Right.
There's pretty few yeses that actually passed it.
Jeff, do you have any thoughts?
I think I agree with your general point that if you're doing something affirmative, it'd be probably, seems sensible that we require a majority of the quorum. On the other hand, I don't know what the practical implications would be, even if the legislature were to take this up, which I think sounds unlikely, unless there were some very, groundswell, which I can't believe there would be for this policy. I wonder if the implications would be meaningful because people would adjust their votes accordingly. That's to say, let's say they changed the rules so that now you did require a majority. People would take that into account when they decided whether to abstain or vote no.
Right.
I think the net effect would probably be small.
No, and I understand what you're saying, but I guess it's the principle. It's what our country's founded on, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, Joel, do you have any input or?
I understand where you're going with it. I don't argue with your thoughts. I'm not sure this is a battle worth bringing to the legislature.
I mean, I realize it's a one board writing is not going to change. Is not going to change it, but I think it's. I mean, we encourage our students here to get involved. I think it would just show that we got involved with the Department of Transportation, and I have to say I was surprised. I honestly did not think that letter was going to do anything. And so, even though this probably will go nowhere, I think it just set as an example that, because if we believe in something, now I have a sense that not enough people on this board support this idea, but I think if we believe in something, we should at least make a case and write a letter. So
I'm fine with writing a letter. I wouldn't expect much from it.
Right.
I doubt I wouldn't spend a lot. I wouldn't engage an attorney to write the letter. I would just write the letter and send it. And I personally would be fine with it. But again, it's not. It's something that I feel extremely strongly about because I think the real effects would be small.
So is there?
Would anyone else be in favor of writing the letter?
I feel like I don't know enough yet to give you an answer. This is how I feel. So am I abstaining. No, I hear what you're saying, and I just feel like before I can agree or disagree, I just for myself need to do a little research.
Okay.
Is how I
So
feel.
there's been
So
legal
I'm certainly
research
not-
on this policy or this practice,
Okay.
right, of how boards of education function and how voting must happen per the school code. That's certainly something, but again, it would be a legal analysis for a fee, and one of the things we've talked about is unless there's enough board interest, we wouldn't engage in that. Certainly we conferred with the attorney, the school code reference is really clear. It's referenced in the policy, you can click on it and get to that school code reference, but again, the question is, would you want to either do any additional legal analysis, or is it drafting a letter? And we would want.
I'd support drafting a letter to IASB and ask them to justify this and let their attorneys spend the time
That's a good
and
idea.
money to
Right.
do the research.
Get something out of them, actually. That's not, yeah.
Great
sounds like
idea.
a-
I'm not in favor of
support that.
engaging our attorneys
Right, I don't
unless it's
want to spend
absolutely
money.
necessary.
I have no problem asking IASB to defend a policy that they're publishing.
Right. That's a good idea.
That is a good idea, but yeah, I would not agree with spending any district money on any
Right.
further legal analysis for this.
I would gladly send a
agree
letter
with
to
that.
IASB
Okay.
and get them on this.
So is there a consensus
Yeah.
to write a letter? Okay. All right.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
I'll draft that.
Okay.
But I don't want to pay an attorney to write.
That's why we have IASB. We're paying dues to them.
That's right.
Well, they have chief, legal
They have a
counsel, so.
chief
Correct.
And
We pay
two
for it, right?
assistants. So
Yes.
Okay, so the next policy that I wanted to talk about was policy 5:330, and that's pertaining to sick days, vacation, holidays, and leaves. And it came to, Martha brought this to my attention.
I'm going to have to ask you to speak up one more time.
Sure.
I can't hear a word you're
Okay.
saying. Sorry.
This policy has to do with sick days, vacation, and holidays, and Martha actually brought this to my attention because there's a small subset of staff here that do not actually, their first year of employment, do not get any vacation time. And I was sort of surprised by that, that they didn't get any vacation time. And I would like us to consider changing this policy to make sure that employees get at least 2 weeks vacation their first year that we give to many of the other staff. I mean, I guess the purpose of that, my personal belief on that is that we need to stay competitive in the market. That not to give employees, I don't know any employer actually that doesn't give anyone vacation their first year, at least something, I think we need to do that for at the very least to stay competitive in the market. And then also I think it shows that we're trying to bring equity across the board to give vacation to all staff, to make sure all staff has vacation. Even though this is just a small subset, there are some people that
I
fall
have
in
a
there.
question. When you say staff, who do you mean?
So it's people not covered by collective bargaining.
Yeah, this is important,
and
because I said, well, we went through all those hours of collective
So it's not
bargaining.
administrators,
Okay,
it's
so
not
who
people
is
covered
it?
by collective bargaining, it is district office support staff, non-union.
Okay, that's important to know.
So it's about-
because
it's
it
about-
matters who it, yeah.
12 people in the whole district? So it's
District
interesting.
office.
It's district office support, yeah.
And they get no vacation at all they work full-time for the entire year and they get no vacation, is that what you're saying?
And because this is also an area we haven't done, I have not been involved in a lot of active hiring in this position. It's one of those when we, have a new employee in that job category, and you look at it and say, no vacation in the whole first year.
Yeah, that seems crazy. I totally agree that sounds barbaric.
Is it a 12-month employee?
Okay, so is there a consensus that we change that policy to?
What happens in year 2? I'm just curious.
They get 10 days.
Okay.
I thought you were going to say 10 weeks.
I
It's a swing.
think we would look at changing the draft or coming up with a draft, and I assume that there would be some formula for anyone who works less than a year, the full year.
Right. Right, like somebody,
Was the
whether it's
thinking
accrual.
initially that they would be in a learning on the job mode and you wouldn't want them gone? What's the original impression?
I don't know the origin of this one, real honestly. I've tried to find out. I mean, it's interesting. We updated this policy just in April of 2019 because we were very focused on it had to be updated to reflect our collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah.
And but this again, it speaks to a subset. It's a small number of employees in District 96. It seems like a potentially easy draft would be to say, rather than the beginning of year 2, the policy says in the beginning of year 2 they start to get 10 days per year, just to say from the beginning of employment or accrued in the first year or something like that. So
I'm just wondering,
After
is
so
what's
many
different about
days,
the
30
first
or
year?
90.
Why, that's what I'm wondering, is maybe there is a reason that we don't want them gone. And I'm just playing devil's advocate. I don't know
Just
if that's
thinking
true or
of
not, but.
my own private sector experience, I think usually there's like a probationary period.
Probationary
Yeah,
period.
something
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
90
You can't-
days or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
usually
Right.
it's 3
Yeah.
months, exactly. You can't usually just go take your vacation the day, after you're
Right, precisely,
hired.
precisely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should change that to reflect.
Right, but I still say even though it's probationary periods, that you still do accrue vacation because in the private sector.
Accrue, but not necessarily use.
Right,
Right.
right,
Right, right,
right. Yeah, accrue but not use. Right.
So we could look at a draft of, there seems to be support to look at a draft of updating it.
Well, so, but
Prorated,
should I ask you, Martha, I mean, is this something that you would like, or is this something that, has been a part of a recent employment discussion, or?
So it's been part of a recent employment discussion, and I would like it. I mean, it seems to say up to a 12-month employee to have 0 vacation days in the whole first year of employment. I'm not familiar with the practice. That's, I talked to David, I said, tell me, in the private sector, is this at all common? And so I appreciate what you're saying about sort of a sense of probationary or accrual, and we can look at some draft language around that.
Yeah, I think there should be, some kind of specifics on when and how they get used.
All right. And so the last policy, we're going back to our first discussion, is Exhibit 7:30E-1 class size policy. I know we've had discussions like this every year, and we were talking about exemptions. I would like to change this policy to remove the class sizes that we have and more make that class sizes more an administrative task. I mean, keep the goals of trying to keep the class size small, but move the actual number to more administrative and let so that we don't have to deal with this, because every year, I mean, this is in my opinion, this is is a pointless policy because every year we have the same discussions, every year we pass it. And so I don't.
I agree with you. The only, I actually support taking an actual, like, I would support adding the goal that we want to maintain a small class size.
Right, no, I agree,
you know,
yes.
To the best of our
Right.
ability. The only thing that I do like about it is that it does have us prompt this conversation. Like, well, it just seems kind of like a.
Yeah, we had this, do you remember
silly
we had
process?
this, we've actually gone through this conversation with the prior board, and there's a reason that we like that it gets talked about. Because it forces everyone to have the conversation about what is right for families.
Because we are in such a unique situation, I mean, we can also just make, that a part of what happens anyways, that we always
Right.
have that conversation, but it is, because we have to waive it, we have to have this conversation, which is, I think, beneficial, because I thought the conversation we had earlier was, very helpful and informative and good for board members to be able to say what they think. But I don't oppose it. I
think it brings it more into the, well, maybe I'm wrong, but it might bring it more into the public's view because there has to be this process.
But I guess the thing is too, a number of school districts also don't have.
Yeah,
those
it's
numbers.
true.
Isn't it
Some of
more
them
common
have
not
no
to have the
numbers.
number?
Yeah.
So,
That's true.
yes, we did some research on this, maybe my first, we talk about it every year.
Yeah, we do. We do talk about this every year.
So school districts often may say something like, recommend small class size to address effective instruction, resulting in student success and well-being, combination of the support services. I mean, I think it's the conversation this board has been having, but by putting the number in there, I think it creates more difficulty in the conversation. I think we could say things like the board will annually review class sizes, the administrative guidelines that could be referred to would still recommend kind of a small class size range. I mean, again, this is, I think we all want to assure the community, right? There's not a goal here to sort of drastically change class size. It's really that the number in some ways is not necessarily helpful to our process.
Yeah, it wasn't even a board that I've been on that made these numbers. These have been around for a long time, and
It's the same 2003
Yeah.
board that.
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying, David. I agree with
Yeah.
what Linda's saying.
I
think,
understand what you're saying.
Just
Yeah.
get rid of those numbers, I think, is a good thing.
Yeah.
I think pushing towards just annual review.
As long as we're very clear through this process and communicating that the practice is the same. This isn't changing the practice. It's not changing, it's just literally removing the parameter
Yeah, I don't want-
that we can't fit in anyway because
Right. I don't want families
enrollment's
worried
too
that
large.
it's going to be a giant number either. I
Yeah.
don't want to create
right.
stress for them.
There's no like ulterior motive to
Right.
changing these numbers. It is-
Absolutely not.
the
We want to be.
practice is going to
We
stay
want
the
them
same.
to be at ease and not to be
Wow.
worried.
I'd like to say this is very similar to changing hard school boundaries to flexible boundaries.
Yes.
I mean, they're
Practice
hand in
is the
hand.
same, and
Wes, do you have a thought on this?
No, I'm in agreement. Kind of said that earlier, I think. But, I mean,
I'm trying to think back. Is it possible to have this conversation any earlier in the summer? I mean, I know you kind of have like rolling
Yeah. Well,
registrations and
right.
stuff up till probably the day of or even after in some
we still have
cases.
children
But
showing up.
Yeah.
So that's why I was trying to publish the number over the summer months so that you would just have that context.
yeah.
Um,
And Jeff did all the work on the algorithm, and we had discussion around that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I know, and it's always kind of a changing target, but I wonder if,
Like, I would say things changed a lot in the past 2 weeks.
oh, yeah,
So,
okay.
And isn't that generally how it always is? It's like the last
yeah,
2 to 4 weeks is like when things change.
it's,
People at the last minute, oh, gotta get my kid registered.
Exactly.
I think it's sometimes new
I'm
leases,
sure
people
that-
who've relocated,
thinking about it, it's
to
summer.
town, so,
I've been there.
I think certainly the commitment to continue to bring the numbers as we have them to the board, sort of over the, certainly the summer months is that critical time, so,
Yeah, I think I'd still like to see the numbers real time
Yeah.
in July
yeah.
and August for sure. I don't want to miss that part.
What we could do, which I think I proposed in the past, to address that fact that we get a lot of changes in July, is we could extend the period of the notification from, I think June 30th is your current sort of target, right? We can make that July 30th. and that way we'll have fewer, sort of surprises.
Well, you'll have, with the same issue, you'll have families though that will have
Right.
difficulty getting childcare
Yeah,
set
they
up.
wanna know where they're at,
With,
and
they need to know who's providing their care. Sometimes in the middle of a month makes a difference to get, sometimes to hire someone. But
Yeah, we do kind of a June 30th
That's the only
notification,
thing
we
I've
do a
heard about
later
that.
notification.
For the request.
Yeah, and because it's not entirely predictable, I think it is challenging for families. Because of childcare in particular, and then also having half-day kindergarten, which creates for many families a very, I mean, childcare needs are real even if it's at 3:30, but the half-day kindergarten, to not know where you might be located, I think is an
How does that work in practice? I'm just trying to understand. Like, so if you don't know if you're going to Blythe or Ames, how does that affect your childcare?
So if, let's say you have in-home childcare.
Yeah.
In-home childcare, and maybe either a family member who does literally the pickup and drop off. And again, some of it is, and I'm still, in year 4, still learning about our childcare options in terms of the different local YMCA's and Parks and Recreation, et cetera.
I just
So
went through
it's-
that last year.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're going with their friend or their neighbor who's taking them. So
There's a lot of, like, nanny
sometimes it's,
sharing.
oh, you're going to
Right.
drive my kid, and
Someone in an email.
you're asking.
mentioned that.
It's
Okay.
not impossible, but you're asking them to drive the kid to a different school. So it's
And then with AM,
it's
PM,
not
it was,
everybody.
if I
It's-
get PM, there's no
creates
AM
issues.
options. But if I'm
Right.
AM, I have 2 PM options, and which one do you do, and which one works
Yeah.
best with your
Yeah, it's
schedule,
not-
and that one's longer than this one, and can I get home to get the kids? And it's kind of nerve-wracking actually to figure out the whole half-day
It's kind of
thing.
nerve-wracking to try to, I found myself trying to help families through that process, and, it's, there's challenges in it because, right, if you're an afternoon kindergarten student, you can't get
Some
some of the
limited options.
YMCA or Parks and Rec programs. So I think the
maybe
notification need is
why
real,
that- yeah.
but I agree, we'd have a bigger number to assign if we waited longer.
Okay. All right. Next item is construction management considerations.
Our owner's rep submitted a memo outlining the pros and cons of using a construction manager instead of a general contractor. A couple of them are, it would allow us to get started on a project while the design's still changing. The construction fee and overhead is fixed throughout the initial procurement. And it will also allow us to pick the best subcontractor bids, which isn't true if we use a general contractor. He also included the RFP, a sample RFP, and some forms to collect the bids on and help select the best one.
I'll jump in. Jeff and I and Jim and Martha discussed this at length with Ramesh last week. The broad overview is that we could get drawings from the architect and send them out to bid, and then a general contractor would win the bid and then build the job for us. And what the CM Cost Plus does is it makes the CM Cost Plus person is the general contractor effectively, and they are overseeing the job. And this gives us the ability to select that construction manager, and then the construction manager then on their end goes and gets the bids for all their subcontractors to do the work. And Ramesh's point is that this gives us greater control over the management and execution of the project, in the sense that we are paying professional fees to someone we select. It would be relatively cost neutral. It's really an issue of control and professionalism.
So I have one question. When they're sort of looking at it, they're saying that changes can be expensive. And I guess under the disadvantages.
Changes are always expensive, even under if we bid something out and then change it 6 months later, it's going to be equally expensive. So Scope changes are always expensive.
No, I understand. It's just, it was basically, you said that has no vested interest in capping costs. That's sort of what caught my attention.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so when you say cost neutral, can you be more specific? What is it gonna cost us?
If you bid it out, you have no control over costs either. You get the lowest bidder.
No, I know this, but are there no cost savings for the manager?
This neutralizes the cost to some degree. It says that the management of the construction of the project is going to be a fee. It's not lowest bidder, so it doesn't have the option to go down, but alternatively, it also controls how much they can ultimately charge, because we're telling them, or they're telling us how high
Right,
they're gonna
so
go.
I don't fully understand the details. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joel, but my understanding is that with the cost plus arrangement, the construction manager tells you in advance, I'm going to charge you 2% of the construction cost, or whatever the number is, and here are my fees and all the rest. And you explicitly see what his fee structure is.
Yes.
Whereas in the other arrangement, the at risk, the construction manager at risk, you don't know what his fee is. Basically, what you get is a bid that includes all of the cost for his
Rolled into
cost,
one number.
all of the
percentage?
subcontractors and all the rest. And so the arrangement is more transparent with the cost plus. And the other advantage that Ramesh described to us is that with the cost plus arrangement, you will see all of the bids for all of the subcontractors. So for plumbing, you'll see all of the plumbing bids,
Yeah, we don't
and
usually
who's bidding
see
them,
that.
and what the costs are. For electricity, you'll see the same thing. And so you can see exactly who's bidding what their overhead is, and you can also then select, inside of the bid. You say, oh, this firm, we used them last time and they were terrible, we're not going to use them again, whatever. And so it gives you more control in that respect. So I think that was what I took away, some of the main advantages. In terms of cost, it wasn't totally clear to me what would be better, but it seemed like it was more transparent. And the other thing he said about 90% of school districts go with the cost plus model. So that's the other factor that
It gives you more control,
Right.
but also you lose. The lowest bidder option is taken away for the management side of the work.
Right.
We are saying we look at 5 potential CM firms, and we try and pick the best one based on the criteria that he lays out. And we could pick somebody who's not necessarily the absolute lowest, but we think he'll give us a better service. Does that?
But in Ramesh's opinion or experience, it's cost neutral in terms of general contractor versus construction manager?
It wasn't totally clear to
No,
me what the
it
cost was
didn't say
neutral or
that.
not. It was a little bit vague.
It was
on
more
that,
vague
on
than that.
that.
That's why I'm asking.
I honestly was expecting it would be more.
I'm
Thank somebody
speaking-
who's-
It could be. That's what I want to
I'm speaking more
know.
from personal experience.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
the cost neutral is you are saying, here's our manager, this is what you're going to get paid. We have a contractual relationship that defines
More
what they're
fixed.
going to be paid. And then they're doing the management on a more professional basis, rather than simply, I'm a general contractor, I'm going to bid as low as possible, and when I bid as low as possible, I have to try and find cost savings somewhere, which will probably come out of my subcontractors. And I'll put the screws to them to reduce their costs so I can still make a profit. The general contractor always makes a profit, almost invariably.
Well, I'm inclined to agree with the recommendation.
And I agree with David. I think Ramesh has been a good owner's rep, and he thinks well, and he defends our interests well.
We were eager to get this to you now because it would be this request for proposal, so the board would take action approving it at, probably the September board meeting. Actually, Ramesh is on vacation this week, but if he thinks for some reason we need to move this forward at the time of the COW meeting to get sort of those favorable proposals, I might propose turning it into a special meeting so we could take one one action item. But wanted you to all have the background and from, appreciate Jeff and Joel being part of a
Yeah,
preliminary
thank you.
conversation with Ramesh and with Jim and myself. So it's another sort of, important detail, critical detail in terms of moving the process forward.
And I think I'll throw this in too, one of Ramesh's favorable thoughts on this is that when we enter into the contract, when you enter into a contract with the CM, that they are also guaranteeing a schedule. And so that has advantages as well.
Can you talk about, real quick for me, the disadvantage number one, that the initial outlay of time and resources are higher? But then, so tell me then how it becomes cost neutral, just because we are avoiding delay or uncertainty or?
The construction manager is going to have to, we're going to have to pay them some time up front to look at those plans and evaluate how much they think it's going to cost, because they're looking at it more from the contractor side.
Yeah.
There's more upfront work to get them started.
And would there be an agreement that limited scope changes would be part of that process so that we don't incur costs? I know sometimes you cannot prevent a scope change, but
Scope changes
is
are
it something
usually
that they're
driven by the
I know by
owner.
structural, I get it, and something
more
that
by the owner than
well, but
anything
we
else.
had that with the elevator. Things pop up and you don't know it's in the wall, and I understand that. But would they be looking to help us maintain?
They try.
Yeah.
So just wanted to have the conversation in the context of this meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so is that something we would want to move forward with?
I personally think we should, based on the reasons the Ramesh gave.
A lot of nods, a lot of shaking heads, okay. Okay, which brings us back around to public comment. Sorry for the wait.
This is why we have two comments.
I'm glad I do get a chance to comment though, because you are stating that you have never gotten an official response from the Hollywood Community Association. But I think their public letter was an official response. I don't know if you really realize that the president of the Hollywood Community Association was in your audience the last meeting. Probably never even knew who he was.
No, we know who it is.
Oh, you do? Okay.
We do.
But he didn't say anything. On your invitation to the forum, you're talking about inviting the village of Brookfield and the District 96. I would think you should definitely include the District RB High School District if any of them could attend, because they too are landlocked and are always looking for additional parking space, and they were very much involved with the discussion that was about the entranceway to the service entrance to the zoo. Make sure you include the zoo, and it might be a good idea to include the Forest Preserve District because they own a portion of the land, and it might be a good idea to invite the village of Riverside, since they are the owners of the property that is in front of the high school, which you could maybe put diagonal parking over there too, on Ridgewood Avenue. So I'm just saying, make sure you invite everybody. The Hollywood Community Association, I don't know if you know how many people, I've lived in the town for 65 years, and I think I've only been to 3 of their Hollywood Community House Association board meetings. There's usually 3 people. President, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer. That's it. And as being a member of the Hollywood Community Association, we cannot vote on anything unless you attend 3 successive meetings. So you're looking at the vote of 3 people. That's how to make the decision, if they should accept or not accept. Don't know if you realize that, but there are rules for their board also. And I think we have a perfect opportunity, District 96 with Hollywood School. It's adjacent to the RB High School with a tremendous football field with a stadium right next door that has a 6-foot chain link fence with barbed wire all the way around it. We're fencing those kids in, but we have no fence around Hollywood School for the little kids. They can run out into the street all they want. But I think it'd be a good idea if you moved your playground equipment onto their land in a corner if they would give you the access to it or the use of it. I think the kids would be thrilled to run around the track one time a month or something, or at some opportune time, or to go to the tennis court and hit a tennis ball or a soccer ball on the AstroTurf. You know, it can be used with great use at any time because it is AstroTurf. You don't get muddy feet or whatever. It doesn't get worn out that fast. You know, it's not like they had to cut the grass before or that kind of stuff. It would be well to get some type of agreement with the high school if you could use their physical activity space. Let's see. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk to any of you privately.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? If not, future meeting dates are September 4th, 2019 is the Committee of the Whole meeting at 7 p.m. at Blythe Park. September 18th, 2019 is the regular business meeting, 7 p.m. in the Hauser Learning Resource Center. Board will enter in closed session at 6:30 p.m. if necessary and return to open session at 7. October 2nd, 2019 is Committee of the Whole meeting, 7 p.m. in the Hauser Learning Resource Center. And October 16th, 2019 is the regular business meeting, 7 p.m. at the Hauser Learning Resource Center. And board will again open in closed session at 6:30 p.m. if necessary and return to open session at 7. If there is nothing else, the meeting is adjourned.